And I'm a big believer in like, the worst you're going to tell me is no. Like, I wonder if like Prada would say yes to being a client. And I told my boss at the time, and she said, there's no way. It wasn't even in her hands to give the approval. She was like, I really doubt that they would do that. And then I remember her coming to my desk and she said, would you believe they said yes? She was just as shocked as me. But if I never would have asked, I would have never known like what the answer would have been. Just take the first step and see. The best case scenario, they agree to it and they say yes.
Yeah. Candace, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you because you are so well-versed in so many of the things that the audience is always asking about and wants us to talk about more on the show, whether it's building a personal brand, whether it's style, whether it's just creating your own path. People are always asking me about it. And I'm like, y'all, I'm not the one. I'm not the one. We can find somebody who can help us, who can help us do all those things. But before we dive in, I would love to start off by hearing about maybe a lucky moment that you've had recently or a time that you recently felt lucky.
Ooh, I think I would say more recently. And this was like end of last year. This was like pure, like, you know, like a happenstance moment where you're like, where did this come from? I was going to speak for Jordan Brand. They had brought me in being like, hey, we would love for you to do like a social media session for a group of ladies we're bringing in. So I was like, okay, like I'm trying to think of a cute little, you know, title where I was like, what can I call this session that I'm going to present? And I was like, let me see how many days are left in the year, you know, on the day that I actually speak. And maybe I'll like put that number in. Ended up being 75 days exactly. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like this instant thing that came to me where I was like, what if I did like a 75 like guide where I gave you like 75 tips for social media and I cover all the things that people DM me about, email me about, comment, you know, about. And so I took a week and pulled together this like 75 not so hard social media guide. And that thing like blew up. And I was like, this is something that I did not plan. I did not say like, oh, I'm going to do this. It's just a moment that came to me just because there was that many days left in the year, you know, launched it at the Jordan Talk. They end up like purchasing it for the whole entire audience and then launched it on my social. And literally I was like, wait, wow. A moment that was not planned that was like beautiful. So I feel like that was a moment that was like very lucky.
I love that. And it's such a testament to the ideas coming to us at the right time.
Yes, yes. And it's almost like going with the flow too, because it was a moment where I was like, can you really pull this together in a week? And I was doing things that I had never done before because I had never launched an actual like product. But the research, I was like, I have the foundation where like I could do the research. I have the community where I can tap people being like, how do you do this? Do you know of anything regarding like on the back end? I have like my website person. So I was, you know, hitting up my entire community, like, how can I do this in a week? And pulled it together. I'm not gonna lie, it was very stressful.
You worked.
But in hindsight, you know, that thing makes me money every week. So I was like, okay, we're trying to get in our, you know, bag of continually making money without touching it. So yeah, that passive income, that's what that started, you know, end of last year, which was nice.
So good.
Yeah.
That's such a great example. What did that experience teach you when it came to, you know, creating your own product, putting it out in the world?
Stop being a perfectionist. And I am such a person where, and I think it's a mixture of like my fashion background and like the luxury world mixed with like social media, but like and this is a whole different topic of being a Black woman, I always have to be put together and polished and, you know, I can't show this side of me. And so I'm very particular about like what goes on my social account. Like, nope, not the right angle. Nope, it has to be like this. And when I promised to put out 75 videos, and that was like another crazy thing where I was like, I will never do that again. But doing it actually was fabulous. I had to accept that every video would not be perfect. I was like, if you're going to put out 75 videos every single day, something is going to be wrong. And I had to get in this, like, I started exercising a muscle of my goal here is not perfection. It's just consistency here. And that really has helped me move quicker on making decisions when it comes to like my personal like social media, being like, you know what, it's okay. A little hair is out the way. It's life where I've been able to be a little bit more maybe transparent when it comes to social media and not as rigorous. Usually I'm not like that with my clients. I'm like that with myself though. But yeah, I feel like it helped me kind of let loose a little bit more.
Yeah. And what you just said about how you are with clients versus how you are with yourself, I think that that's such a real thing that so many of us feel, where it's so
Yeah.
much easier to give grace to other people, but then we have these standards for ourselves that we would never hold anybody else to. And that can look so many different
Yes.
ways.
I actually talked to one of my colleagues. She like hit me up. She was like, "Hey, do you mind taking like a call with this guy that's in the industry and he's getting into like the flow of things and he just needs some like mentoring." And I was like, "Yeah." So I chatted with him last week and it was so funny almost seeing a mirror reflection of myself because he was like, "I feel like I need to do the next thing and then the next thing." And I was like, "You just did this huge thing." And then I was like, and as I'm saying this to you, I also have to remind myself too that we don't take time to sit in our wins and we're like on to the next, on to the next. But it was nice, even though I was saying things to him, was almost like, Candace, you need to take that for yourself too. I too deserve grace, just like I give to other people. And most times people are not even looking that deep at it. Like I have like a microscope and people are not even looking that hard.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And also that part about not celebrating our wins, I feel so heavy. There was this post, I think it was maybe on Threads or something, that ended up making its way over to Instagram, where someone said, my toxic trait is not feeling a source of accomplishment or a sense of accomplishment after finishing big things, just a mild sense of relief that it's done. And I was like, I feel attacked.
Yes.
Heavy.
I actually, one of the YouTubers I follow, she mentioned something about like when she trains for a marathon, after everything is over with, she feels like this depression of like, what do I do now? Like I had this like high and now it's like, what do I do with myself? What is this moment? And I feel like a lot of us who are like in, just natural go-getters where like once we tackle one thing, we don't take time to be like, okay, wow, you just did this thing. We're like looking for the next thing. And, I heard, talking with a friend, we were like, is that a scarcity mindset thing? Like, is that where we're like, if I don't keep moving, I'm going to be forgotten about? And that's really in the social media world, like, I have to do the next thing. I have to be like constantly present. But it's nice to kind of like take a beat and slow back and enjoy. Even as I'm saying this, I recently got signed, and
Congratulations.
and that was the natural reaction that everyone has had. And I realized I was just skipping past it. So I would say it. And then my assistant the other day was like, I just want to tell you congratulations on getting signed. And I said, thank you. And I realized in that moment, I had not taken time to just sit in that and celebrate how far how long I've worked and all the moments that brought me to that moment. And it can be hard, but I almost have to like put pen to paper. Something I kind of started doing is at the end of every week, I've been writing down the good things that have happened. And I've been like putting it on like my poster board above me. So like I see it when I sit down at my computer. And that kind of has helped me keep grounded of, yes, we think about all the things that need to be done or the things that we want to do, but there's also these things that are great and big and little me would be proud of. So yeah.
Absolutely. And having that as a visual reminder too is such a good idea. I do something similar, but I keep it in my Notion because Notion has like my whole life.
Yes.
And I have my little weekly wins practice. And I have a recurring appointment Friday at 10 a.m. Like fill out your weekly wins. But I do realize I don't necessarily see them. After I fill them in, that's great. And then I don't really think about it again until the next week. So I love that you have yours on display so you can see them.
Yes. Because a lot of times out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of times I have to be like, no, go back and read this. Because even in this week, I'm like, there's so much happening and so much going on and so much to do. However, like these are the things that you have accomplished and done. And it's not that long ago. Like this is just this year where I'm like, look at the things that have happened this year. And it's a great reminder to kind of like pull you back in those moments where you feel like you're going a little bit too far to the left or you're tired or exhausted or like running yourself into the ground. That, again, I can rest, take a beat and come back because like these things happen. They're going to get done. So yeah.
It'll all be there.
Yes.
Yeah. I would love to take a step back so that our audience can learn a bit more about your career path to get to where you are, because you have had a really, I think, really cool trajectory and really created your path in so many cool ways.
Yes.
So can we talk more about your early career journey and how it got you to where you are now?
Man, it's so interesting when I look at my career journey. It seems so like smooth sailing, like, oh, she knew what she was doing. And I was figuring it out as I was going. And now it tells a really nice story. I just knew I wanted to be in like fashion journalism. So for me, I'm from the South, from Arkansas. So like everything that I saw was more so like in magazines, not actually physically being in New York or being in like in LA. Um, and so in my mind, once I moved to New York, I was like, oh, I'm going to pursue this thing like really heavily, and was at like Essence and Lucky Magazine at the time, Vogue, met like some of my really good friends there. But then there was a moment and like I was writing an article, and that's when like Facebook and I think it was Twitter at the time, like just became a thing. And so you didn't just write your article, you also wrote the caption for what was going on the social media platforms. And that part started to intrigue me more because I was like, wow, the traffic that's leading back to this article is coming from this small little caption or this thing that I thought was small at the moment. And so I really like leaned heavily into that. Refinery 29, I would say would be my first like social media specific job because I feel like they were like one of the earlier pioneers of doing social media so robust and
They
then
really
fully
were.
digital.
Yeah.
They didn't have like a magazine or something like, paper tied to it. And so I remember being like, I need to get there. And that's where I'm going to learn like all these things regarding social media. And they had a large social media team, like compared to like during that time frame, there was like 2 people doing Twitter, 2 people doing Facebook, 3 people doing Instagram. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn a lot here. But the only thing I didn't like about it was that it kind of pulled me away from the fashion world. It was very pop culture, and I'm not really a pop culture girl. Like even celebrity wise, like I'm so out of the know when it comes to like things like that. But fashion, I'm like, I know that. And I'm like, how do I put myself back in that space? But there wasn't that many jobs that were like fashion and social media. Like it was such a niche. And I remember seeing a job posting for Barney's, New York. I was like, social media manager. I was like, let me see if I like apply for this job and what happens. And little did I know, my future manager and my current manager were like really good friends. So I think like I went in for the interview and I like emailed her to the side being like, hey, I don't know if this job is still open, but she brought me in, did the interview, went really well. And then later on she was like, oh, I actually know your current boss. And she said you would be great for the job. And so I was like, it was a nice transition over. I said I probably would still be at Barney's now, just if everything would have been like smooth sailing, because it taught me so much. And it was so nice because Barney's, I felt like, was so innovative in the way it thought. Even having a social media job, like I was able to hire like an influencer like coordinator. Like during that time, like nobody was thinking about influencers, and to actually be able to hire a social media assistant and an influencer coordinator, have a team. It was like really, really nice. And then working with all of these fashion brands also, where I got to see what were their social strategies, what are their digital strategies, and all these brands are doing social media differently. But the consensus at the time was they thought social media was going to go away. And a lot of the designer brands, when I would go to Europe for like Fashion Week and we would cover it on social media, a lot of the brands would say to me, this is not going to be around for long. So like, we're letting you like come for now, but we don't think this is going to be around. Little did they know,
Right.
this thing would blow up and be really big.
Mm-hmm.
And my last corporate job was at Prada, oversaw social media for Prada USA. And at first, I remember when I knew I was leaving Barney's, I was like, am I going to be bored at like a silo company? Because I was used to working with multiple brands versus working with just one individual brand. But to me, Prada was like so iconic that I was like, okay, it passed. I only had like a few handful where I was like, if I go and work for like one brand, they're in the group of like top 3. So I was like, you know what, let me get this experience. Let me see. And this was actually a nice, because they reached out to me. And it was through, I say, like you talk about mentorship, but then you talk about sponsorship, where a colleague of mine, previous past colleague, was saying, hey, you should talk. I have a young Black woman who you should talk to, because I think the role had been open for a long time. They couldn't find anybody. He was like, I have the perfect person for you. And so I went in for the interview. And I was like, this is interesting. I feel like they're trying to convince me to come work here versus asking me questions. And it was like the easiest interview ever. So I was like, yeah, I want to take it and hear like the things that I want it to look like. But being at Prada, that's when like Black Lives Matter, like that's where that rollover was. And I kind of knew, I was like, it's time for me to step out on my own. And in the midst of being at Prada, I actually started my nonprofit, Black and Corporate, just because I was like, this experience that I have in this corporate world as a Black woman, even in the luxury fashion space, I'm still hearing the same stories of my colleagues who are engineers or in the finance space, who it doesn't matter. We're all having these same experiences and stories. But I knew it was time to kind of like step out on my own. And and stepping out on my own, I let Prada know, hey, I'm going to start like my own like consultancy. If you want to be a client, I would love to negotiate that. And they end up saying yes. And so it was a nice little transition, leaving the company, but also having their blessing essentially to take them on. I think we worked together like the next like year and a half, like rolling things out still. So that's a little about me in a nutshell.
And I love that through line of alignment.
Yes.
Of whether it's like the managers knowing one another, that it's like
Yes.
these things that were ready, these opportunities were ready for you to step into them,
Correct.
which is, I think, really beautiful.
And I always say you never know, because I feel like in the things that have happened, it's not that they a lot of times would come just so perfectly, but it took me just doing one step and then it like happened. And I always say like, you know, things can happen, but a lot of times you have to take that first move. And I'm a big believer in like, the worst you're going to tell me is no. So even I thought to myself, I was like, I wonder if I can negotiate. I literally had like a whim. Like, I wonder if like Prada would say yes to being a client. And I told my boss at the time, and she said, there's no way that, because it wasn't even in her hands to give the approval. She was like, I really doubt that they would do that. And then I remember her coming to my desk and she said, would you believe they said yes? And she was just as shocked as me. And I was like, you know what? In my head, all I could think to myself was the worst you were going to tell me is no. And I still was going to go out and do my own thing. But if I never would have asked, I would have never known like what the answer would have been. So I feel like that's also been like this connector of just take the first step and see. And worst case scenario, it's going to be a no. But the best case scenario, they agree to it and they say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if the worst case scenario is you have to pivot, that's not a terrible scenario.
Not terrible. Yes. I mean, and always a no kind of stings. I think I told somebody that they're like, how do I say no? And I feel like I'm always like harsh. And I was like, you know, no might have a sting a little bit, but you kind of think to yourself, okay, how do I pivot? No doesn't mean it could be a not yet. It could be this is not the door. Not necessarily, it's not a no to the entire like idea of it. So yeah.
Definitely. I would love to talk about what your transition was like as you were going out of corporate consulting on your own, what that experience was like for you.
Such a learning experience. Like being an entrepreneur, even to now, I tell people like, I don't have it all figured out. But that's the thing. I don't think you have to wait till you have it figured out to do the thing. Like I'm a person where like I'll figure it out as I go. And I always say I do things scared too. Like a lot of like my friends are like, oh, you just did that so effortlessly. And I'm like, y'all, I was so scared. Like I did it during the pandemic. So let's talk about that. I'm living in New York. I decided to quit my corporate job in the middle of a pandemic. I'm living in Manhattan. My rent is expensive. So I'm like, if this thing doesn't work, like those comforts and things that I've created and worked so hard, that can go away in an instant. So it was very much nerve-wracking, but I still told myself, okay, I have this finance major, so this backup plan. I like had like a backup plan. If this doesn't work, I can like pivot to like this type of job. There's always going to be like, I feel like with social media too at that time, because it was booming so during the pandemic, I was like, I can pick up someone really quickly. The planning though was that by the time I left my corporate job, if I didn't make a single penny, I could still last for a year on the income on the savings that I had. So I kind of was.
You had that safety net.
Yes, I had like a safety net. I had like that plan where I was like, I didn't just like leave and be like, you know, I'm leaving without. No, I had a plan. I was like, okay, financially, we're set for a year if I don't bring in one dime. Okay, you know, we're gonna do all the things of like cooking, not ordering out, like doing, you know. I feel like a lot of money was saved during the pandemic too because we weren't doing all these extracurricular activities that we normally would have done. But then I started to just like talk and collect clients. During that time, people were reaching out pretty heavily though, just because it was the pandemic and a lot of people didn't have social media plans, or a lot of people who thought social media was something that was going to come and leave. They were trying to find people. And then a lot of colleagues, whether they were at Meta or at TikTok, they were fielding in clients to me being like, hey, are you taking clients on the side? So I started to create this like funnel of, okay. And when you do great work, people talk about great work. So it almost, I even say to this day, I've never publicized I'm looking for clients. All my clients come via word of mouth because someone has said X, Y, and Z. And I think especially in the like entertainment and celebrity world, because if you honor people's like privacy and you understand like, hey, we're going in and doing a job, they appreciate that and they are more willing to work with you and they tell their friends about it. And so it's like this funnel, I feel like the cycle that I've kind of created. But it didn't happen beautifully and like just like even down to like the accounting part and the finance part and the business side. People see all the glossy things of like, oh, you worked with this, you did this project. And you're like, you guys, I'm trying to do this tax stuff right now. Like, I'm trying to figure like what's
the state of New York. If they send me one more letter about, I don't even know what.
I'm like, I don't know any of this.
Yeah.
The finance background did help a lot, I will say, because I come from a finance background, did my MBA. That was like my mom's like, you need to do this just in case this doesn't work out over here. So I was like, okay, we'll do that. So that did come in handy with starting up my own business. But a lot of it came through, okay, YouTube tutorials, talking to your friends, even from a legal perspective. For the longest, one of my colleagues that I went to school with, he's a lawyer. He was doing like looking over my contracts for me. He was like, I'll do a pro bono. He said I have to do amount of pro bono work anyways, like at my company. So like using my community to like tap, okay, what do I do here? What do I do here? I was asking everybody on how to do certain things and setting up, hey, for this, schedule, let's create like an outline. Let's create something where we can come back to knowing exactly next year, what do we do? Even down to like hiring a staff. That's a whole nother thing where you're like, okay, I'm getting into the position where I can hire someone. I need help. I struggle the longest with being like an assistant. I know this seems, and maybe other people, that seems so basic to a lot of people. But for me, I'm like,
no, I'm struggling with that.
I'm like, do I do this? Can I afford to like bring on someone and pay someone's like income? And then once it happened, I was like, oh my gosh, it freed me up to do so much more because they're taking off those mundane tasks that like I really don't need to be doing. But even that was a struggle for me. Again, it's been all like figuring it out, but really tapping into my community and asking when I need help, is there someone that knows this? Any random person knows like an accounting service, a good, I don't know, lawyer. Like it's just all these little things when you are a small business, living in New York, Black woman, you really want to tap into your community and see like who, and a lot of times the extension is not too far out. And if your community doesn't know, they probably know someone that can help you.
Right. Yeah. The answer often isn't too far off if we're willing to ask for help. Yeah.
And that's the thing, being willing to ask for help and not trying to figure it out all on your own. Because again, it could be those moments where I'm like, why am I sitting here struggling? And I'll be sitting here like looking at the computer being like, you actually could ask someone about this. There has to be someone. And it could be a quick story post like, hey, is there anybody that does this? It'll be up for like 5 minutes. 3, 4 people have answered me, to find someone that I need. So yeah.
It's a big learning. It's something I'm struggling to learn too. Yeah. Especially the hiring. I reached a point this week where I was like, I need an assistant. I probably needed one 5 years ago and still haven't done it. I'm like, okay.
It will free you.
Figure that out.
But it will free you. And even like from an idea of a calendar, like even just taking that off my plate, I was like, nope, don't do my calendar anymore. Like I just look at the calendar to know where to go, but someone else is like managing that for me so that I can do the best that I can in my job and not these like, but again, I feel like we also are used to doing everything. And so it seems like, am I wasting money like to hire or to bring this person in to do X, Y, and Z? Or we think because we can do it, that means we should do it. Even I talked about it with video editing. Somebody was like, did you do that video editing? I was like, for this video, yes. For this one, no, I outsource. Could I do it? Yes. Do I need to use my skill set right there for this week? No. Like that needs to be outsourced so that I could deliver on all 5 clients, including myself. I treat myself as a client too as well.
For those things. Okay, I definitely want to talk about that. But for those things that require you in your zone of genius that are front facing,
right?
Then yeah, it's like you save your energy for that. But the back end thing, like editing a video, for example, it's someone else's zone of genius could do that and still have a great end result.
And I think because I was like, nobody can edit like I can do, or no one's going to understand like the style that I want. And you'd be surprised if you just explain, like I have a system now where I use like, even like for editing, where I put like my notes in based on like, from this second to this second, when I say this, I want it to look like this. And of course you might have to do like a few rounds going back and forth, but that person learns. You have to give somebody grace to learn how to do something that you like, like no one can do it like I can do it. That's probably true, but someone can learn it. And if you teach them, it just take a little bit of patience. And in the long run, you'll be able to move a lot quicker with certain projects.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I want to come back to what you just said about treating yourself like a client.
Yes.
Because I love that. Can we talk more about what that looks like for you?
I had to have a moment where I was like, I'm doing all of these things for everyone else. even starting YouTube. And I'm like, I'm launching other people's YouTube. I'm like making them grow. And I'm like, I've been wanting to do this thing. And I was like, you know what I have to do? I have to treat myself like a client. Because the thing is, I wouldn't let a client's work slip through the cracks. Like, I wouldn't make an excuse of why I couldn't do that or, oh, I'll get to that. No. I make sure I handle that. So I had to flip the script within these like last year and a half where I said, I'm going to treat myself as a client this year and put myself more front facing in a way where, and when I say front facing, in a way where people know what I do. So I always like, because my services were more word of mouth, it only came to people that knew like my career or knew like the space that I was in. So like it was more so if you didn't know, it's not that you would have never reached out to me. It's just I don't know what services you offer. And I think a lot of times people go to your social media and assume who you are and what you do. And you're like, that's probably like 5% of maybe who I am. If you're looking, that's what I choose to share. But like everything else, it's really not showing you more than that. And I kind of just wanted to show more like, here's who I am, here's what I do. So you kind of have this foundation of, you don't look at the page and like, oh, she just wears nice clothes or she just does, which again, that's not a problem if that's what you want to portray.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to come more off as like this expert within the social media space and for you to kind of to really own that and for you to see that. And coming with that is that I make sure my social channels reflect that as well, just like I'm putting in that work for other clients. So I think it was like maybe this is now like 2 years ago where I was like, let me start this off with a series, basically where I introduce who I am, what I do. I'm going to somehow like narrow this down and I'm going to do it going into Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week. And it was so successful, but I think it was more people being like, even people that thought they knew me, they were like, I didn't know anything about you because you just shared all of these gems. But then I just noticed treating myself as a client, I started to like prioritize and not let things slip through the cracks, which interesting enough led to more clients and led to more like projects coming my way. Yeah.
I think that speaks to something that you do so well, which is having a really strong personal brand. And I would love to talk a little bit more about that because that is a question that I get from members of the audience where maybe they want to start some sort of creative endeavor. Maybe they want to lean into their personal brand. They're not fully sure how to strengthen that or how they want to present themselves. Right. What has been helpful for you and how do you recommend people start that process?
It's so tricky because I always feel like I'm such a person to I don't want to say reinvent myself, but in a certain way, reinvent myself. Like the way my mind thinks and the way like my creativity, I'm creative when it comes to any aspect that I do. Like I always say like whether it's my hair, my clothing, the way I do like video editing or how I portray storytelling, I really go all in with like that thing. But then I like to try new things. And so when people say brand, in the traditional way, I think it kind of sometimes limits you where like I have to stay in this box. If it's off brand, I can't do it. And I hear this a lot where like people are like, oh, I want to venture off into the fashion space, but they only know me for this. And I'm like, everyone wears clothes every single day. Right. You too can be in this space. Like it doesn't have to be or it could be and. Like I also do this and I do this. I appreciate this space and I appreciate this space as well. So I think when it comes to like branding, I think it's just more so, is it something authentic to you? Is it something that makes sense to you? It doesn't have to be like on my color scheme or everything is like same in uniform. I always said when it came to social media, a lot of people were into like, I need my photos to be a square because that's what it's going to present on the profile feed and I need it to all look uniform. And I would always say that you should more so focus on the individual thing to be, not perfect, but like you're satisfied with that one thing. You make that thing to the best of your ability, not trying to look from a profile perspective, but an individual thing. And naturally, your profile will look nice if you work on each individual thing being nice. So I kind of go back and forth with this idea of branding, or maybe it's the traditional way that people use branding. But I think if you're authentic to yourself and it's something that you're interested in, that's on brand. That's something that can fit in there. But to the people that are creative and you're like, I need to reel it in to like be like a few things. Something that I did this year was focus on like 3 pillars for myself where I'm like, hey, I have so many ideas that I want to do, but maybe going into this first quarter, here are 3 things that I'm going to really hone in on. But from an aesthetic standpoint, from a styling standpoint, I say if you are interested in it, it doesn't have to really fall necessarily in this certain box every single time.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that though. I think that there's so much freedom in that, and it's less about putting yourself into a box, and it's more about how you're choosing to show up to tell your story. And sometimes you may tell it a little bit differently, depending on what's going on, how you're feeling,
Right.
what your priority is. But I actually think that that's very freeing. I like the way you described it.
Because I think there was a moment too where like I was so stickler about like my visuals and imagery and how things that I wouldn't dare take an iPhone photo. Like that's how I would think. And I'm like, that's not my aesthetic or that's not my, and then I was like, but if I like it, I like it. And it's a little bit more freeing to be like, hey, it's okay that it didn't fit in this particular thing that I wanted it to fit in. I feel like a lot of things that I started to like open up more freely about on social media, I would be like, are people even interested in this? Because they know me for this. And then I start seeing those things perform way better because it's hitting home with more people, but it's not in this like super polished way. I feel like there's a time and a place too where I feel like certain things might be like for a brand for me. Like you're going to get your style picks during certain like, fashion week. It's going to have like certain aesthetics to go with it, but also give myself freedom and room to play too as well. Like try new things, like open up. Like it doesn't have to be something that I've seen before. Like let me try something else that I haven't seen before.
Bringing the fun back to it and the
Yes.
creativity back to it. Everything has just started feeling very formulaic because I think there's just so much noise and the algorithms and people are kind of fighting to feel heard. And then I think it's taken a lot of the fun out of it for a lot of us.
It's definitely sucked a lot of, because what social media was in the beginning, it's definitely not what it is now. That's something I spoke about at Adweek where I was like, listen, you're going to be forever chasing this like algorithm thing if that's how you're going to view it. And you will put out nothing that you actually are interested in. I tell my clients at the end of the day, are you happy with this? And that's all that matters. Yes, I can try to do what we can do, like where I know certain things like the timings to post, the certain, copy to use, just all the little tricks to help it perform. But at the end of the day, still, are you happy with this thing? Okay, good. If you're not, then we can change that. But I just think being happy with what it is versus I think people go into it, what are everybody else going to think? Do they like it? No. Do you like it? That is the number one question you need to ask yourself before you put it out. And if I like it, it's being posted, whether it gets a lot of likes, views, whatever, that's how I feel about it. Because I'm proud of that work.
And do you like creating it? Do you like it while you're doing it, or do you just like the response that it gets? And you also need to like it while you're doing it.
And that's the thing with trends too, because like a lot of times you're like, you would have never really did that trend. It's more so you're doing it because everyone else is doing it and you're trying to beat this algorithm thing. And it's like, that a trend has to start from someone, right? Someone had to do the thing that no one has done before, and then everyone started copying it and then became a trend. So why not just start something new or try something new that could be the trend or be the thing that other people follow, especially when it doesn't feel authentic to who you are.
There's an element of, I think, bringing play back into it.
Yes.
That is so important, where we can feel more comfortable to experiment and try new things, even if we haven't seen them before. And being more playful with it is where I think a lot of that creativity comes in.
Yes. And sometimes I even said, sometimes you put on your blinders where you don't even see, where you kind of take the comparison out of it, where you're like, I feel like my best ideas come in the shower or when I'm out for a walk and I'm like, ooh, how could this look? And then even a lot of times if I can't visually tell the story, you work with someone who can help you kind of tell that story. And that's like even with like hair ideas where I'm like, my braider, I'm like drawing it out. I'm like, hey, do you think this could make sense? And like, we'll kind of figure it out together. But a lot of times, if you are constantly looking at something, you're almost like constantly chasing something versus if you kind of close everything out. I use this app called Opal where it like locks me out of my accounts.
Ooh,
and it's
Opal. Okay,
yes.
We'll have to look that up.
It's really nice for when the moments where I'm like, I don't want to compare. And I think there's this natural, you don't try to do it, but by seeing other things, you naturally start this comparison thing. And so I'm like, let me shut everything out. I know that my creativity is there. I don't have to look at something for that to come and for that spark to happen. So yeah, just putting your blinders on sometimes is very helpful.
So helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've used Opal to kind of tune out the apps and you're wanting to get back in touch with your creativity. What are some of the things that you like to do that help you with that?
Ooh, I'm a bath girl.
Mm-hmm.
I started this, I would say it's a ritual. I take a bath every day. And I started doing that because social media is so fast paced and my world could be crazy. Not even at times, it's probably always like something happening. And I almost need to have like this control over like, okay, how can I step away and separate myself? And so like to me, that's a boundary of the phone doesn't come there. Like this is just a time I can think, step away, relax, wind down the night. Like it's also like this like ending of once this happens, there's no more phone, there's no more computer, there's no more of this thing. I've been taking walks recently where like whenever I feel like I'm hitting a wall of I know I can figure out this thing, I'm trying to be creative and it's not coming to me. Nature, like going out, taking a walk. I live on the water, so it's nice to just like go out, do my like walks in the morning. Um, Spending time with family or just like talking to friends. Like a lot of times your creativity comes when you step away from the thing, where you're not even thinking about it, being in different environments that you normally weren't in. Even when it comes to social media, I started doing this thing where I'm not even on my actual account. I created a curated Finsta of like different like artists and like people who do like planting and like things that would never show up on my actual feed, just so it shows me different things that I normally wouldn't see and just to kind of block out like maybe what my peers, directly who are in my world are doing. But there's about 3 things that I do to like spark that creativity and kind of get those going.
Those are amazing practices. I love the Finsta idea. I have a secret Pinterest account that
Ooh.
just has all different, it shows me just all different kinds of things, whether it's like visuals or decor or textures or color palettes that's completely unrelated to everything that I do. And it just is like my happy place to go escape to.
Well, it's so calming being on whenever I go back to my Instagram, I'm like, anxiety. I'm like, over to the Finsta account to like not look at anything. Exactly. Or similar to Pinterest, like Cosmos. I don't know if you heard it, that platform.
No, I haven't.
I say it's like the editorial version of Pinterest, like the glossy version of like all the editorial like images and like you can pull up like, old magazine like visuals, but like it's more like the curated, I guess, version. But I have like so many mood boards on there when I'm just like, I want to be creative. I want to think about like different things and just like scrolling in a way that doesn't feel like I have control over it. I feel like naturally our hands go towards our phone and we start scrolling, and which is why I used Opal, where I was like, okay, you're doing this a little bit too frequently, and I like to have control over what I'm doing and be conscious that I'm doing it. But I feel like when I'm on my computer and I'm actually looking for something and I'm scrolling through visuals and I can actually take it in, it's like that appreciation is there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can enjoy the art for what it is when you're savoring it a little bit more slowly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Girl. I would love to go back and also talk more about your nonprofit that you started. Even before we were recording, we were talking about an event that you did in Chicago earlier this week. But I would also love to talk more about the work that you do in that space.
I feel like that has been something that I almost call it like a slow burn, where like starting it, I remember telling my friend, I was like, I have this idea. And just knowing how busy I am, I was like, I had this idea. I said, but I know if I do this thing, the impact that it'll have. And I almost wish that I would have had this, like being in these spaces, like starting off in the beginning. And she was like, just know if you start this, that it will impact people and it will be like the help that a lot of people need. And just doing it, I felt like I started it. So many like people reached out to me just to help. Let me start there. Like, and the people that have been with me from the beginning, it's like, I think it's like 6 Black women that have helped me run Black and Corporate. And we meet like every other week and just like go over like, here's the things that we have coming up. Here's like, how can we help people in a way? But for me, the main thing that I thought about when I first created Black and Corporate was mentorship. And how can we change that to sponsorship? And I based it on my experiences being like, the way that I've maneuvered in my career has always been through someone of like, whether it was that relationship building or like, having a boss that like, actually cared and leaned in, or having that colleague that referred your name and said your name in a room that you were not in. And I was like, how can I replicate that, but do it for multiple people? And so like the idea that I had was like a mentorship program, but we're connecting like younger corporate individuals with more seasoned corporate individuals. And I also felt like once you get out of college, people kind of forgot about you, that yes, you know, when you're in college, you had all of these programs, but where is it at when you're like younger in your corporate career? So I feel like this could be such a great resource. And I remember just organically reaching out to colleagues being like, would you volunteer as a mentor? And everyone was saying yes, like yes, yes, yes. And then we had like the natural, like organic signups, and people were like, yes, I want a mentor. And naturally going into Black Lives Matter, like that was a very, you know, exhausting time for people who were working in these spaces. And we're like, yeah, all of this is happening, and I still need to get this report to you by such and such at 4 p.m. And no one is understanding like the trauma that I'm feeling within these spaces. So we started that mentoring session based on the people that I knew and my colleagues. And then I had another colleague reach out being like, hey, I work at Caring, which Caring has like Gucci and like your Bottega, like all under one house. And he's like, we would love to see what that looks like, bringing you all in, Black and corporate, and doing like a mentoring session. And so it ended up being fab. And I was like, I love this for us. And the people that were got to be mentors, we basically took more seasoned professionals within Caring and opened up applications, and people, I think we narrowed it down to like 50 for each like cohort. You got paired with a mentor, and over the time frame, you not only met with your mentor, but you also got to bring in, we brought in like the CEO of Gucci, CEO of like different, I think it was Bottega, I'm missing one, but you got to sit there and ask them questions. And I was like, this would have never happened on a regular day, that you're sitting here asking a higher up to this like level, how do I maneuver in this space? How do I become or, you know, move into this fashion space? And the story that I love is that there was in the mentoring program a young lady who was actually working in retail at Gucci, and she applied, and we were like, is she allowed to? I asked them, I said, hey, can we let her, you know, apply? And they were like, yeah, this should be fine, because they weren't thinking that somebody within the company would try, you know, to be a part of the program. And then while we were sitting in the meeting, and everyone, I think the CEO of Gucci wanted everyone to basically say their name. What do you do? So when she heard that the young lady worked for her after the meeting, she was like, can you pass me her information? Because her whole thing was, I'm trying to move from retail side to the corporate side, and it's like this wall that's like, I can't get over there. And so that opened up a door for her instantly because of connecting and the power of connecting. We know that by someone, you know, connecting, you can change your entire trajectory of your career. And that definitely happened for her. But then that happened for so many others. I met two young ladies the other day where they approached me. They're like, you don't know me, but I was a part of your program with Caring, and that I'm still in touch with my mentor. They have helped me get like this job. There was another woman at Luxottica. She was like, I'm the VP now here because of that program. And I was like, these are the stories I love to hear, because you know that it's actually making a difference. And I was like, let's take out this middleman situation, because I just want to connect the people who need connecting and let them handle it from there. So that's kind of what started like the mentoring, you know, program. And for us going into this year, we were like, how does it look like after the pandemic? How do we do more like in person? How do we like actually create this community? And so we just recently went to Chicago, did a collaboration with H&M where we did like Beyond the Break Room is what we called it, and had a nice panel from like few people from Chicago, a therapist that sat on the panel, someone that worked at YouTube previously, and brought in all of these individuals who were in the Chicago area, and they got to ask questions and us to basically uplift each other being in that corporate space. And I said, it was a full circle. I actually was reading an email coming here, and he was like, thank you so much, like the team, like this was actually so nice. But seeing that community is there, you just have to be willing to connect with people. But yeah, Black and Corporate holds like a very special place in my heart, because when you don't think you're really helping someone, having those people reaffirm that this is helping me, this has done something for me, this has changed my career. I almost want to put people in the position that, you know, when you're like, I wish I had this during this time frame. So we're hoping to do more of those pop-ups throughout the summertime with H&M.
And that's something that can really change the trajectory of someone's life.
Yes.
Like getting them connected to the right people in their careers, getting them into the right roles on the right path will literally change the trajectory of your life.
Yes.
It's so incredibly important. Something that you touched on, and I would love to kind of elaborate on this for the audience, is the difference between mentorship and sponsorship.
Yes.
Can we talk more about that?
Yes. At first I didn't even know. Like I was like, I don't understand like the difference. They're like, but do you have a sponsor? And I'm like, what is a sponsor? They're like, this is somebody that we're talking about like can make a financial difference in your life. So while this person might say like, hey, I can mentor you and give you like advice and give you like the trajectory and road, for this individual to come in and say, this is the person you need to hire, they change my trajectory financially. And that's when we talk about sponsorship of it's putting money into my pocket. It's basically from a long haul perspective, it's going to help me. Even I said like Prada helped me lay the foundation to be able to go out on my own. Like even being there, because I was like, got paid really well, but then that set me up for success. But that wouldn't have came without a simple conversation. He's at dinner being like, this is who you need to hire. So it wasn't even like me saying, I went in, I had the conversation. It wasn't your traditional interview. Those tables start to turn of, I'm looking for opportunities. So those opportunities are being offered to you. So, you know, having a mentor is extremely important, but I feel like having those people who are sponsors, that is, that's life-changing. Both are life-changing, but then that hits in a different way.
That's what gets you into the rooms that, you may not be able to work your way into otherwise.
By yourself. And again, leading back to that power of connection and talking to one person that leads to it. It's like this little thread, which I kind of like said, like, that's how my career has kind of been mapped out, where I'm like, I can pinpoint someone at every stop. That was the person that got me to this. That was the next person that got me to this. And full circle of people connecting. I also want to say, coming from a place of maybe more so being Black, we also don't realize that a lot of times like our peers outside of that, like this is what they've been doing. And so like learning that, because again, when I said I didn't even know what like when someone's like, do you have a sponsor? I'm like, what is that? Like, I have a mentor, like, is that not the same thing? But it's like, no, these are how they have been getting into rooms. And so when we're able to do that amongst ourselves and our community, and for me, I really want a Black in corporate to be that. I'm like, no, I want to make the difference where they're like, hey, I pinpoint this and this is how it changed my career trajectory. Like that's ever changing.
So important.
Yeah.
So important. Candace, thank you so much. This has been so good. So many gems. But before we go, I want people to know how they can work with you, how they can continue learning from you, whether that's about social media, whether that's about brand partnerships, whether they want to get involved with Black in Corporate. How can people do that?
Oh my goodness. So for partnerships, if you want to look at my page, I always say Instagram, Marie_Mag. I feel like you can type in Candace Marie at this point because I feel like I have that SEO power now. But like my personal page, a lot of people hit me up. Anything educational wise, you will see on my personal page, and like usually a quick like comment. We DM you like everything for that happening. Consulting, my email, everything is like on like bio things. For Black in Corporate, the Black in Corporate email is there. We constantly get emails of people wanting to join our community. And like whenever we have something like that pops up in a city, we keep those emails on file. And we did the same thing for Chicago, and all those people like came out. So definitely email or Instagram.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll make sure we have all of that information linked in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.